I wanted to ask about the indictments that came out Friday against the 13 Russians and some entities, since we haven't had a chance to talk about that here yet. You know, the special counsel laid out in exquisite detail, you know, some of what happened in the meddling in our election. I was curious whether that information has increased the sense of urgency here at the State Department to take some actions, you know, in response to that, you know, perhaps to use some of those sanctions authorities that we've discussed became available to you in the recent weeks.
This is something that has been on our radar ever since the Secretary came into his position as Secretary of State. I think the number of questions that we've gotten about Russia and Russia's meddling in our elections has sort of ebbed and flowed. We've had times where reporters and the outside world has been very interested in this, other times where they have not. The Secretary has spoken very openly about his opinion that Russia meddled in our elections. He's been very clear about that. The Secretary just spoke to Fox News within the last week or two and spoke to the fact that we believe that they are interested in becoming entangled in our overall elections process. That is no secret. Let me remind you, the U.S. government and the State Department has done a lot when it's come to holding Russia accountable for its actions back in the 2016 elections. We've talked a little bit about CAATSA. A lot of you have said, oh my gosh, you haven't imposed those sanctions just yet. Remember, January 29th was the first day that we could impose sanctions. Among the things that we have done, and I'll have other things I want to talk about in addition to CAATSA, but among the things that we have done, we have sent out ALDAC cables to all of our posts around the world, where those posts have been instructed to speak with their host governments about the new CAATSA law in explaining to those countries, here's what you could face if companies, if individuals are involved in these sorts of activities that meet a certain threshold that would contribute positively to Russia's defense and intelligence and other sectors that are similar to those. So we've been communicating with our posts. We've been communicating with like-minded governments. We have hundreds of people around the world who are working on sanctions activity each and every day, not just at the State Department, but also at Treasury and other departments as well. So this is something we continue to comb through those transactions. I know you all want to see results overnight. We don't have sanctionable activity just yet, but we are working every day to try to determine if there is something that is taking place. If there is something taking place, we will sanction those countries, those individuals, and those entities. That is something we continue to look at doing very, very carefully. In addition to CAATSA, though, when we talk about election interference and how the U.S. government has responded as a result, we have other sanctions that have taken place. Please make that clear in your reporting. The sum of our actions as it pertains to Russia and Russia's meddling in our elections is not CAATSA. We have done a lot more than just CAATSA. There have been other sanctions that have taken place. You may recall the previous administration kicked the Russians out of their dachas. We have kept them out of their dachas. We have closed a consulate in San Francisco. People seem to forget about that. We have closed facilities in Washington, D.C. and also New York. That certainly upset the Russians. That is partly because of what they did in our 2016 elections. You may recall last month, or maybe it was late December, that we expanded the list of individuals who were sanctioned under the Magnitsky Act. We also had the Global Magnitsky Act, in which there were Russians who were named, at least one Russian or two, who were named under that. In addition to that, we have the sanctions that are put in place because of Russian activity in Ukraine. Our government is engaged on an interagency level where we are talking with one another and we are putting forth actions, activities related to Russians' malign activity as it pertains to our 2016 elections. So please, this is not just CAATSA, it's a whole lot of other things that people tend to forget about.
So that's a really good list of steps the U.S. has taken to essentially punish Russia for what happened in the last election. Anything that you can add as far as conversations Tillerson or others have had with the Russians to try to prevent them from doing it in future elections?
Yeah, so they are well aware of our position on this. Secretary Tillerson has said to the Russians, and he said this publicly, it has to stop. We're watching what you're doing. The issue of bots, you know, we're still seeing bots out there. This is not just a U.S. government approach, but the private sector needs to do something as well. We are somewhat limited in terms of what we can do. We don't regulate Facebook. We don't regulate Google. Some of these private sector companies need to stand up, and they need to be good American citizens and help us to prevent this. The FBI is involved with this. DHS is heavily involved with this. And the Secretary has asked and has spoken to Congress about setting up a new bureau here at the State Department that would handle cyber activity. You all have talked and you've asked me in the past about our special envoy for cyber. Well, we're changing that. The goal is to change that to make it a cyber bureau that would be headed up by an assistant secretary. So if anything, we're elevating the importance of cyber activity and cracking down.